Hezbollah's forces coming into the mix, and now they're attacking Hamas. Do you think that all of this is strategic to weaken all of the actions of resistance so that they can focus solely on Iran and try to take Iran's leadership out?
Well, let's go back to Pete Hegseth's claims about taking out the Houthis, Al-Ansar. Didn't work. The Houthis are still there. And in fact, the Houthis drove the United States Navy out of the Red Sea all by themselves. So these kinds of things don't often turn out the way you think they're going to turn out. And I think this is one that's writ large to be that way. Mm-hmm. I just don't see how we are going to do anything to Iran at this particular juncture with Israel or without Israel that is so significant that the repercussions are not worse than the action. Mm-hmm. And if they go whole hog, I mean, we're talking about big casualties, casualties, U.S. casualties in Al Udeid, in King Khalifa, in the what do we call it in Kuwait? It's the largest throughput organization in Southwest Asia, maybe in the world. It's where we put troops through if we have to fight in Southwest Asia somewhere. Really magnificent facility. And then we've got facilities in Egypt, and we still got, although we're trying desperately to get them out, facilities in Iraq. And of course, we've got facilities in Saudi Arabia, and it's not for a minute that I don't think Iran wouldn't go after those too. If it were with its back against the wall, it knew it was up against Israel and Donald Trump in the United States, it'd go all out.
Mm-hmm. And they can also reach U.S. assets in the Indian Ocean, also in the Arabian Gulf.
And one wonders what those hypersonic missiles, which we have not seen used against an aircraft carrier, will do. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be surprised to see an aircraft carrier with 5,000 souls on board in Davy Jones' locker on the bottom of the ocean.
Mm-hmm. Well, why would Trump do this, even with pressure from Israel? Because if Iran closes off the Strait of Hormuz, then oil prices is going to skyrocket regardless, and we're seeing that the economic effect upon America would be devastating.
I do think that Iran would be very reluctant to do that and would restrain itself, even if it were in a preemptive war itself, because the number one buyer of Iraq's oil is China. And Russia's in a signature alliance with Iran. But China, I think, has committed to back Russia up in that alliance. And I think one of the principal reasons, is because China gets so much oil from Iraq. So isn't that curious that we went to war in Iraq and China's the biggest buyer of their oil? But it's not curious if you've read Dennis Fritz's book, Deadly Betrayal, because we did the Iraq war in terms of oil, not for us or for any of our allies. We did it for Israel. And Dennis Fritz's book ought to be read by every American because it tells you we did it for Israel. So China does get most of that oil coming through the strait. It gets a lot from Russia too, but that's a significant, I forget, it's over 20%, I think, of China's oil. So they will want Iran to keep the strait open and might even offer help to keep the strait open. They've put ships over there before, and I know they've reconned it thoroughly. I know the PLN, the Chinese Navy, knows that area pretty well. So they might even put ships there to make sure that the strait, to help Iran keep the strait open, not close it.
Mm. And don't you think that if this thing goes down, because I've heard also that some of the people in power were very mad when the Ayatollah and the Iranian president accepted the ceasefire because they were destroying Israel. Do you think this time it'll be too much pressure for them to accept the ceasefire when they start? Because Israel is only like the size of New Jersey. And Iran is like the size of Alaska. Iran is like the size of Alaska, and
90 million people versus 14 million people.
And what is it? Alaska is what, 2 times the size of Texas. So yeah. We're looking at a major discrepancy in land mass. So do you think that they would be under the Ayatollah and the leadership would be under tremendous pressure by the IRGC not to commit to a ceasefire after being attacked this time, because they also have constituents that they have to play to.
Well, the situation in Iran right now, as I understand it, and I'm going to go to a webinar here at noon to see a little bit more. I've had a person in Tehran, and I've had a person in Bandar Abbas, and one elsewhere in the north, recently kind of giving me a readout on these protests. Mm-hmm. And the way I read the protests from this input that I've gotten is, yes, there are genuine protests, because the Iranian currency has been devalued to the point now where they can't even buy foodstuffs. I mean, they're in deep kimchi in terms of the problems that they have with their economy. So yeah, they're mad at the government for allowing that to happen, and they're really mad at the IRGC because they know most of the money the government does make, particularly off oil and gas, is ripped off by the IRGC commanders. So they're angry with that too. But they know the IRGC will shoot them for their anger. So there's genuine protests going on in Iran right now. But here's the situation that's going to develop if Iran goes preemptively to war, or even more so, we attack with Israel. It's going to make the people fuse. They will no longer be angry with their government. They will hate our guts, because this is exactly what happened when Israel attacked them before. They became a nation at that moment. They will do that again. And despite all the problems they're having, they understand that a large part of their economic problems is due to our sanctions and European sanctions. Mm-hmm. And so they're not stupid people. In fact, person for person, Iran's one of the smartest countries in the world. Mm-hmm. And 51% Persian, they used to run the world, and they ran it rather well. One of the few empires in that past period that really ran its empire fairly well. Cyrus the Great, for example, in Hebrew, was called Messiah by the Jews because he treated the Jews within his empire so well. Jews forget that today very, very handily. But if you fuse those Iranians in a opposition that is as it's equipped right now, you're never going to beat them. You're just never going to beat them. The only way you would ever have a prayer of beating them would be to put 2 or 3 million soldiers on the ground and march from one end of Iran to the other and defeat them. And that would require you to take about 1 million casualties. So there's no, I've done the war planning for this. Remember back in 78 and 79 when the Soviets moved into Afghanistan? Mm-hmm. We thought, we being the United States Army, we thought we were going to have to fight in Afghanistan because we couldn't believe the Soviets were just going to stop in Afghanistan. They've always wanted, Russia has always wanted, before Catherine the Great, warm water ports on the Southern Sea at the end of the Persian Gulf, Bandar Abbas, Chabahar, places like that. We were convinced the Russians were coming on down through Iran and going to take those warm water ports. So we did war planning. Man, we came away from that saying, if you ever have to fight in the Zagros Mountains in the heart of Iran, you don't want to do it. That's tough territory. And so you would have the Houthis times 20, times 30 in those mountains and fighting you every step of the way, every minute. You don't want that. This isn't Iraq with deserts, flat deserts where you can fly airplanes everywhere and all. We dropped bombs on their nuclear points. I don't think we did hardly anything to them. I think we just made the ground rumble a little bit. They had already moved a lot of the equipment because they were forewarned. And the bombs really don't penetrate that deeply to do major damage. So that's how tough this terrain is. It's really tough. And they've been taught by the North Koreans, the best underground workers in the world, how to do that underground in Iran. So you just don't want this war, but it looks like Trump does, and it looks like Bibi does.
With and in closing, I just have 2 more questions for you. One is about, we talked about the state of the Iranian economy due to sanctions, but couldn't Iran make a deal with Russia and China? Look, we need a currency swap. We need capital here to stabilize the economy a little bit so that we won't we can put down the protests and we can stabilize the food prices and everything like that. Do you think that they are smart enough to talk to their allies and raise these points to them to try to secure capital in there to, you know, to level off the economy?
Well, it sounds good, but there are two things that are really militating against it. One is the Iranians don't like to admit that they need help in that way.
Yeah, true.
The government. Two, Russia has got its hands full. I mean, they're winning in Ukraine. There's no question, but they got their hands full, and we're making a mess for them in Georgia and in other places along the southern rim of the Caucasus too. And so he's got his eyes in a lot of places. We're also making a mess, trying to make a mess for him up there in the Baltic. We're trying to use some of the NATO members to, you know, go after the Ghost Fleet. And we're looking at Kaliningrad. You know, remember that stupid statement by that army general? And we're also making some, shall I say, sub-ocean attempts to disturb them just short of the Arctic.
Imagine being able to build anything just by thinking